hard getting here? Yeah. I think it's supposed to snow, I think all the way going through the weekend. Who knows what next week will look like? All right, so Friday, we will have an online quiz, 30 questions. It shouldn't be that difficult to complete, shouldn't take that long. But I'll leave it open, I'll leave the quiz open practically for the whole day. All right, so it'll be open online. So yeah, no class Friday. All right, so plans, project plans. Who's brave enough to come up here and talk about their plan a little bit? Got a few people do it. Let's get some volunteers. Yeah, have at it.
So my plan, which has a working title of Mentor Renter, is, as name implies, we can essentially rent mentors or tutors for specific skills. Now, what differentiates this from, your typical myriad of tutor services is that this will focus more on less academic skills. For example, it'll focus more on, like maybe you want to learn a specific computer program that isn't typically available on tutor sites, whereas they'll have usually they'll have college courses for tutors, or math, or science. You can maybe learn, I don't know, maybe skateboarding, if some skateboarding tutor wants to sign up, or some art tutor, which they have those for math, for school, but this will be a more freelance approach to tutoring, essentially. Tutors will have their own profiles with time slots, so you can see available schedules that you can maybe purchase a time slot if one of their schedules aligns with your own. You can see reviews from other people who've had those tutors, and also reviews those tutors have given to customers, which will also have profiles, in order to gauge whether, maybe if a tutor has only done negative reviews, maybe you think, oh, well, maybe he's the problem, maybe he's just bad at teaching or something. So essentially, you're going to be able to gauge a good amount of information from a tutor profile. They might have some evidence of their work. Going back to the skateboarding example, maybe the guy wants to post some videos of him doing some skateboarding tricks to prove his skill to you. If you'd like to learn something like that. And that's really all I have so far. In terms of monetization, I was thinking maybe tutors would either have a subscription plan where they could subscribe to use the service to post themselves on it, or maybe the website might take a % of their tutoring rates. But that's about all I have right now for in terms of ideas.
All right, excellent. Give a round of applause. All right. So, questions. Mentor, rentor. Is that what it's called?
The working title.
Working title. Okay. What do you foresee to be sort of your main challenge in making it a successful operation?
Maybe the free videos you can find on YouTube for many of these things. I think that's a lot of, I think you can teach yourself pretty easily if you wanted to. A lot of things. So, some people like the one-on-one experience. So I think that might be a challenge, as well as, other tutoring sites. While they might not focus on these sorts of things, other tutors do exist, and I think obtaining tutors might also be a bit of a challenge.
Okay. Cost structure. Okay, so you think with the tutors, right? The tutors are just maybe contracted for specific time slots that, depending on who subscribes or wants to have a certain subject to be tutored in, right? So are you thinking they get a cut of the final cost of what it costs to have a tutor session? or like how would that work for the tutors? Cause you're gonna need a bunch of tutors, right? You're gonna need a bunch of people to teach.
So like a tutor would have, okay, say you got like a calendar here, and a tutor would like put little marks here, like, okay, on this day I'm open from like 7 to 8 or something like that. And this is my rate for that day, or whatever, you know, my
Mhm.
pay rate. You know, someone might go, hey, I'd like to buy this day, this time slot in advance, and you know, they buy some in advance, you know, because
Mhm.
no one can buy just one tutoring session. But, so either from that, you know, the website might get like, I don't know, maybe 10% of that price, the website itself might get that.
Mhm.
Or I might do like a subscription service for the tutors, for the service of being able to put themselves on a site where people can easily access it.
Okay. Yes.
What have you done for recognition? Like, after taking the course, would they be some kind of diploma or certification?
Could you say that a bit louder, please?
What do you plan on for recognition? Like, the people who take the course, after that, would they have like some kind of diploma or certification?
Oh no, this isn't like a professional tutor. This is like, you know, more freelance, more recreational activities. So, you know, you might get, like I said, skateboarding, or maybe, you know, maybe hunting, I don't know, something like that. You know, things you don't typically need a diploma for, you know, just a fun skill, like maybe you wanna do clay modeling or something. You know, someone could teach you that. So it's not something you need a certificate for typically.
Go ahead.
Would the tutors be required or have the option to tutor a person like in person one-on-one, or since this is like a website or an app, I'm assuming, would it be all virtual, or how would that look like?
Well, ideally, we'd want them to be one-on-one, because, you know, when you want a tutor, you know, there's not much separation from a video if it's not one-on-one. So, we might make that optional. We might make specifications like on their schedule, you know, I'm available for one-on-one live in person, or maybe I'm only available for, digital. We might make that an option. Yeah.
So, this concept of like, finding some sort of mentor or tutor isn't really new. I mean, I think Masterclass, I've heard of it, kind of like a video platform for teaching you how to do things like cook. And there's sites where you can have like sessions with the tutor for like learning another language. So, this service you're planning, it seems very broad, with like a variety of topics such as skateboarding or something even more serious. So is the fact that it's kind of a broad range somewhat of an advantage compared to other sites that are designated for teaching in certain subjects?
Well, I think what I want the specialty to be here is forgetting the focus of more traditional tutoring things. Like I said, you know, like math or science, we're not aiming for tutors in those areas. We're aiming for tutors for fun things that people want to do in their free time, which I know I couldn't typically find very easily. I could only find videos, but I couldn't find very many tutors, you know, in a selectable, like, how should I call it? In an easy selection, you could find and look up like my idea envisions.
Okay. I had a couple more questions. So who are your suppliers? What's the answer to that?
The tutors.
Tutors, right? Customers are people who come onto the site. Process, think of processes we're talking about, okay? You have slots, right? 24 hours in a day. If this thing is global, we have all different time zones. Maybe it's open 24 hours live. How do you manage open slots in which you could be making money, right? Versus, you know, getting the number of tutors you need to fill in those slots. Then also think of maybe controls of pricing. So you're like, well, are you allowing the tutors to use their own pricing cost structure for what they're gonna charge tutors? or you putting in controls to say, hey, this is the most you could charge for this session at this time for this long, and this is the minimum you can charge, because this is a business, and it has to be work for you, your bottom line, right? So it can't just be a free-for-all. So I would say, as you go through thinking more about this and think about process, think about all those elements. The main thing is like the availability of the tutors, right? We have, there's 2 tutors teaching one subject for 2 hours. That's a lot of money being lost, right? When you could just fill in those gaps. So you're gonna have to think of how do you recruit more. That was a good point, brought up by this gentleman here about how do you build return customers? One of the things could be a certificate of some sort. Who knows what that looks like, right? The thing is, you wanna build your students to come back. You wanna build motivation to come back. This is something they can put on LinkedIn as some sort of certification they've taken through your platform, right? They completed an entire 6 months course of tutoring or something of the sort. Right, so these are just things to think of, like, hey, what is the process to get return customers to come back? What's the process on the limit of cost controls for tutors? How do we manage the amount of time we have availability versus the number of tutors we actually have to teach? Are we regional? Are we global? Things like that, right? And just, most likely, your thing is you're supplying technology, right? You're supplying a platform, think of like Uber, right? Your main resource is your platform, your ability for your platform to manage tutors coming in and students hooking up with those tutors, categories they wanna, and subjects they wanna be into. So just think of that broad sort of spectrum when you think of process, right? Because that's gonna be the fundamental thing of how this is actually gonna work. Right? From concept, which is a great idea, I think it's an excellent idea, but to like how could this actually work on paper or something? Any other questions? All right, thank you for coming up. Not everybody wants to come up because people don't like to talk in front of people. But this is the great part, is talking in front of people, just let it all out. All right, I need another volunteer, come up here and give their spiel. Yes?
So over the summers, I work at a boba shop, and we are open until about 10 o'clock at night, and we are on a street with a lot of other bars, or a lot of bars and clubs and things like that. And I've noticed that a lot of people come in really close to our closing time, because while they're out, they wanna come get a treat, and they treat that as boba, or people might want caffeine in the same way that you get coffee when you're drunk. So I think it is a good idea to open an alcoholic boba shop. And this would be called like the Boba Bar, or if we built on an existing chain already, like the chain I worked for, called Gongcha, it'd be like Gongcha After Dark. And so we would have things like Bailey's or Kahlua to put in the milk teas, and then tequila and vodka to put in the fruit teas and everything like that. And we could do infused toppings, like infused tapioca, we have like star jelly, lychee jelly, things like that. So it would just be a boba shop that's open later at night for people to come. It's more of a gimmick, kind of, like the fact that you are getting alcoholic tea, so.
Excellent. Major challenge in this idea.
Well, breaking into like the restaurant drink business is pretty hard anyways, and there's supply chain issues. I know when I worked there, we had a lot of supply chain issues with getting the best ingredients from, I believe it was from Taiwan, and there were always issues with that. And it's also, you have to have the correct staff and the correct certifications for everything, and building the recipes would be experimenting and everything.
All right, and scale, what sort of size are you thinking about for this project?
Like,
How big is the space gonna be for this shop?
so mine, I believe that it only needs to be like a small one in a like strip mall type thing, like a shopping center, the company I worked for, we had a variety of sizes. One of them was in like a mall food court. So we really only need about that size. We need a kitchen and then a small space for people to come get to go, but there are places for people to sit. Or there's another route we could take where it's like an actual bar, and so there's a place you can sit up at front and people can make it in front of you. But I still don't think it needs to be very big because I don't really think of like boba tea, and even if you have alcohol, I still don't think that it's a place where you go to like party. It's more of a place where you go and you drink it and then you leave. So pretty small, I would say.
Hours of operation, what would this normally look like?
I would probably see it being open from, cause I don't think anybody's gonna come in the middle of the day. So I would probably open around dinner time, like 5 or 6. Because I think even though it is alcoholic, it's not gonna be like super high in alcohol content, so I don't believe anybody would have a problem getting it around dinner time. And we would be like near a restaurant where people could come while they're waiting for their reservation or while they are waiting on the waiting list. So I would say about 5 to 6, and we would stay open until probably, I would say, about midnight.
Depending if the mall
Yes.
food court would allow or be open.
It's hard, the one that I worked at was an outdoor like shopping center, so their bars were open till about 3 on the
Old Orchard?
weekends. Sorry?
Old Orchard, was it Old Orchard?
No, it's actually in Austin, Texas,
Okay.
called the Domain, but, so they had things open until that time. There.
Alright, and so theoretically, how would you make money and have operations? How could you expand that if you're only gonna be open for X amount of hours in a day and try to get enough revenue and profit to make it worthwhile?
Well, I think in the same way that bars are, we would go near other bars and other locations where people are doing those things. And so since we're only open about half the day into the night, but bars are pretty similar unless they're like a restaurant and bar.
Yeah.
They're already opening later and closing later, so we would be open a pretty good amount of time. It would just be the time is shifted in the day rather than earlier in the day.
Alright, so your main idea is differentiation, cause you're saying, hey, we're providing a little bit of alcohol, but we're totally different than a bar, traditional bar, sports bar, American bar, something of the sort. Thus, this will work, but when you observe bars, let me just ask the class. How many bars, like, do you see last more than 10 years on average? Like, is there, like, name some bars that you think have a model to where they last a very long time without having to close their doors? Give me some examples.
Joe's on the street.
Yeah, so maybe Joe's, think of Bar Louie, right? They got a pretty good structure on that. But the other ones, right, so bars are very difficult to start, especially if it's, a new concept or idea. Because how do you actually, like, how do you pull people in? Like, right, there's so many differentiation of bars depending on your location. And so your thing is looking at the bar industry. Is it like, what's the actual turnover of people having a good idea that lasts past 10 years versus the number of people who open the bars and then you drive past 2-3 years and they're closed. Which would mean it's like, okay, they exceeded their space, they're too big, right? Too much rent, too much utilities, too much operations for the amount of people that come in. And so maybe, I like your idea because it is being in a mall where there's high visibility and maybe keep it extremely, extremely small to say like, we don't wanna be that big. We don't wanna be Bar Louie, right? That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to be the size of Auntie Anne's or something like that. So I think those are just some of like ideas to think of. Size, scale, location is gonna be the big one. And then really, you gotta be making this 24 hours in a day, right? If you're only open for X amount of hours, that's the other thing with bars. Only open for X amount of hours. I mean, the place is just sitting there. So it could be like, well, I have a secondary idea when the bar is not in operation, something that ties in during the daytime or something like that.
That was kind of, if we partnered with a company that already exists, like
Mhm.
Gongcha, then regular Gongcha operations would continue during the day, and then it would start serving alcoholic drinks whenever they close, and it'd be like kind of a merger of two different businesses, and so that way it's not just completely closed during the
Yeah.
day. We still would get that market of like, we get a lot of kids coming in and things like that, and families, people shopping around, and then when it closes, the bars are still open, so then we would still be open.
Awesome, like it. It's a good, partnership's always good. Questions?
I was kind of thinking of like that risk that you were talking about bars, and you said to like merge with like a boba shop that already exists, but I was thinking maybe like another way to like offset that risk is to kind of like do a trial basis in a restaurant, because you said to like do it near a restaurant while they wait. And I know some restaurants do like, oh, you can wait at the bar, so if it's like Asian food, you can do like a boba bar,
Yeah.
trying it out.
And doing research on this, I've learned that there are a couple bars in Chicago that do have specialty drinks that are like boba tea, and so I think there is definitely like a market for that, for it to be like a, more of a combination with a restaurant or an existing bar and just more of a product instead of an entire store, so.
I mean, I think if, you know, if you wanna, sort of gauge the market for it, you could say, well, we start off doing a pop-up in a mall, right, we just have a small kiosk. Therefore, we could kind of gauge the demand, we could gauge the demographics of people who buy, at what times, how much they order, you know, revenue, things like that, so those are other options too. Yes?
So, two things. You say that you would start the alcoholic beverages at around 5 to 6. Do you still see a potential issue of having to like card people, like assuming that kids would still be out around 5, 6, 7, 8? Let's say 8 is the latest, but it could be later. So would you see a potential issue with like having to card kids or make sure your staff are trained to identify younger people?
Yeah, I definitely see the people working here being like certified bartenders, but I think it would be a nice, thing to get into the bartending industry, I guess, as more of like, cause you're not making that many specialized drinks. But I would have them be certified, and it would be, we would be carding more people, 5 to 6, of course, but there is, on this same street, there is a popsicle shop that has alcoholic popsicles, and so they have kind of the same issues, I guess, where they also card people, and they're open about 5 to 6 until late, so we would have those issues, but I think it's easy to handle with just the proper certifications.
Oh, so, first of all, this idea reminds me a bit of Taco Bell, because if I'm not mistaken, their flagship location in Las Vegas actually does serve alcoholic drinks. It's a bit more, I guess, gimmicky or more of an experience than your average Taco Bell. But my main point though, you mentioned that this was gimmicky, and also, I haven't really gotten boba or went to a boba shop, but I think, when I think of boba, I know people take them on the go in their cups, but you're serving alcohol, and I don't think you can order alcohol to go. So, will you be focusing more on the experience of the restaurant?
I don't know the exact restrictions about alcohol. I know during COVID, some of the to-go alcohol restrictions, kind of lifted more. People were able to do like to-go margaritas from Mexican restaurants and things like that. So I don't know exactly, that is an important thing to think about, but, yeah. The popsicle shop that serves alcoholic popsicles, we were allowed to take those outside and walk around with them. So I'm not sure, I would have to do more research on that, but it is, you know, you see signs when you go somewhere that say no alcoholic beverages past this point, and so it could be just that is what we have to do depending on the restrictions of where we are.
Do you believe people will be interested in that? Because, Cuba, people at Hampton can come to Asia, and it doesn't exist there. There's probably a reason for that. So, my question is, Is it good? Like, have you already tried it? And do really people will be interested in that?
So I have not tried it. I recently turned 21. But my friend was in Latvia and she had alcoholic boba. She said it was good. And not to stereotype Americans, but we're not the best at keeping things traditional, and so I do think that there is a market for it. Taking something that we already have adopted from the Asian culture, and it's getting really, really popular here, and kind of making it our own, putting alcohol in it. That's kind of what Americans do.
Now, what's another strategy you could use in terms of location to kind of circumvent what he was saying about alcohol restrictions? Think of another location. That actually one is
Like music festivals, rodeos, things like that, where you're allowed to walk around with alcohol, where they, zoos, places that aren't like indoor private places.
yeah, a major one I'm thinking of is like airports.
Yeah.
Alright, so obviously people wanna have some sort of alcoholic drink before they board their flight, after they got off their flight or whatever. So airports could be another huge consideration, like, we only located in airports, we serve alcohols, all through the day, right, cause people wanna drink. That's something else.
I'm from Austin, Texas, and our airport is filled with just local restaurants and local breweries and things like that, so I think that is a really good idea, as it's like a good starting off place for like a local restaurant for people to support.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. What he did mention was experience, so I think another consideration as you kind of develop this and look at some of the risks and things like that, like, what exactly is it gonna be like to come in there that's gonna really differentiate you guys from like other experiences? Somebody else? Yes?
In most states, the law is that you can't walk around in public with an alcoholic beverage that looks like an alcoholic beverage. So you can't walk around with like a bottle of beer in your hand or something like that, especially if you go around parks or something. The reason popsicles work is because even though there's alcohol in it, you can't specifically tell that there's alcohol in it. So my question would be, would your store be interested or consider doing something where like cup sleeves, where you could put the sleeves or the cups in branded sleeves so that you can't really tell what's in there, but you're still getting the boba, like it's branded so they know it came from your shop. You just wouldn't know.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Our most boba comes in like branded cups already, and it's like to-go cups that are sealed with the straw that you poke in. So I don't think we would have any troubles with it looking like alcohol, except for the label, which would imply or explicitly say
Contain.
alcoholic boba, but it shouldn't look like it's a can of beer or anything like that.
Miles? Yeah, you think of too, you could, even as part of this plan, begin bottling some of the boba to sell, distribute it to be sold in other stores. Be part of the revenue stream. All right, no more questions. Thank you very much. That was all of us. One more person wants to come up here with. Yes. At the Blackhawks stand.
Yep.
So my idea is going off the idea that my dad and our neighbor Joe had. And it's pretty much making a barbecue restaurant in our neighborhood, which is by Midway Airport. So right now it's a lot of chain restaurants and like there's no real barbecue places, and the ones like there's only one, but it's a little bit further away. Not the best. We've all went there a couple times. Never really like enjoyed. We're like, oh, we'll give it one more try, but it never like got better. And so what the idea is kind of just going with the phrase and keep it simple. So it's kind of going to be just a carry-out place with just like pulled pork, ribs, and chicken wings. And then it's also going to have sides such as coleslaw, mac and cheese, and chips. It's just going to be carry-out only to start. Kind of get the name out there, see how business goes, and then eventually expand. But like I said, you want to keep it simple. and also have like 3 different sauce options, which will all be homemade. And to kind of the name for it is gonna be Uncle Morgan's Barbecue. So it goes off of like 2 friends who love country music. One of their favorite artists is Morgan Wallen. So it kind of just keeps growing off of that.
Excellent. What do you see as major challenges to this project?
I think one of the challenges would be the location, because there are some restaurants like in the neighborhood, like there was like a Checkers for a while, and they're trying to put like an Andy's ice cream shop, but they've only lasted a couple of years before shutting down. So I think it's gonna be just finding the right location to make it like stick.
Scale, what do you think in terms of size?
I just like pretty like small, just like kind of like, we have a place called Parisi's by our house. It's just like a walk up like hot dog place. It used to be like a drive-in kind of place, so it was like kind of just, you just walk in, place your order, get your food, then go. And they had like a couple stools if you wanted to eat in there, but it's more so just like, it was smaller than this classroom.
So you're focusing on more to go
Yeah,
items as opposed to a sit-in restaurant
Yeah.
experience.
at least to get the name out there and see, like just like I said, like keep it simple, kind of keep it small, just like do just the carry out only. That way you don't gotta like worry about having to hire more workers for waitresses, worry about more like room, like electrical, like all that type of stuff.
Questions?
Yep.
So, for location and the fact that you guys would ideally be carry out, and you said there's nothing where you live right now, and you live by Midway Airport. Have you considered maybe a location near Midway Airport, especially for people coming in to Chicago?
Yeah, cause I live like 5 minutes from the airport right now, so it's like you wanna kinda in that area. I live off one of the main streets that connects to Midway, right by Archer and stuff. So I think that it's like a busy place, and there's like bars, and there's like also like chain restaurants, as I mentioned. So I think somewhere in there would be good, cause it's like, that leads to I-55 and stuff too.
So, are those hotels nearby?
Oh, that's the other direction. Yeah, but maybe like looking at like the whole full area and seeing like where the best places would be for, based off the hotels, based off the airport, and like off the neighborhoods. Yep.
So you mentioned you're next to the airport. In terms of like getting your name out there, you mentioned that it'd be carry out just so people could spread the word about it. Would you also consider like advertising like within the airport, or you said it's by I-55, maybe on one of those like big billboards?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, so that's what kind of I was thinking when Corey was up here about like putting it actually possibly in the airport's land. I never really thought about that option until you brought that up, so that's even like an idea to consider. But kind of just, that's the hard part about it, like, with it being exactly in the airport, like wanna kind of build that like local neighborhood feel. And so that's why I kind of just kicked it outside the airport, but definitely for like advertisements in the airport, like make sure it's like Chicago barbecue on your way out, like, or like on your way into town rather. And kind of just also like billboards on I-55.
Do you plan working with Uber Eats or DoorDash?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially because that was such a growing thing, like especially during COVID and stuff too, and like so many places are doing it. So especially since we are gonna be based off of carry out, like mostly carry out, it's gonna be just a good thing, like to another thing to add to it. Kind of just help build the name and build a brand recognition.
And so you're creating demand from quote unquote Chicago barbecue, or like, is it?
That's just the, what I said right now.
So is there an emphasis on differentiation of saying like, okay, we do Texas barbecue, we do St. Louis barbecue, or it's just our sauce is remarkable? Like, what do you think is the differentiating factor from persons like, well, I'll go to this barbecue joint versus this one?
Yeah, so it's gonna be mostly like just the dry rub used on the meat and stuff too. So like, my dad and like our neighbor, they've created their own type of dry rub together that they've used on everything, and then like they're working on different sauces at the moment to like, cause you can like eat the stuff without the sauces. Personally, that's how I like it. But like occasionally, like my brother-in-law, he's like, oh no, I wanna like smother it in sauce and stuff. So it's kind of just like working on a thing, but mostly just the dry rub to start. And then if you wanna add the sauce, there's like gonna be the different types to like go with your style barbecue.
Okay, so for this chapter, we're talking about quality and performance. What needs to be quality for this operation to be successful? Like, what sort of quality issues would you face to make it not be good?
Just like the meat coming in, like you need to make sure you have like good meat and stuff, and like make sure like you're using it at the right times. It's like cooking for the right amount of time as well, because sometimes like you're running that issue, especially with smoking meat. It takes several hours. You know, like the term for it is like low and slow. You don't have a low temperature for a longer amount of time, so you can like run into that if like it's not ready on time.
Yeah.
That like you don't want to serve people undercooked food. or overcooked even.
So think of that concept, like, people are working before the doors open, right? So people are coming to prep the meat maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 hours before.
Even the
And
night
so
before
you
too.
have employees already on payroll before you start making a dime, right? Doors open, do you transfer that cost to the cost of the product? Right?
Yeah.
So just, just things to think,
Yeah.
not asking, but just things to think about. Other thing is quality and performance deals with, are you able to get out enough product to meet the demand of the people who
Mm-hmm.
want it? Or are you gonna have the capacity and the capabilities to carry out 50 orders in 2 hours or
Yeah.
something like that? But these are all things, kind of effectively put into this plan of thinking like, okay, we need to meet a demand of, if we need to meet a demand of 50 people who request chicken wings or brisket or whatever,
Oh.
or do we have the capabilities to run that? How
Yeah.
much does that cost? Like things like that. But I think it's an excellent idea. I mean, who doesn't want to eat good barbecue? Yes.
Would you guys make enough for it not being on the go and more catering option?
Yeah, that's also like an idea that like we were all considering too, because right now like family friends have contemplated, hey, like we had to when you made pulled pork at this party, like we had to can you cater for like a huge party and stuff too. So like that's also an option to consider, kind of just like if you want bigger like parties that have to be placed like a long time in advance to make sure you can get the product and have the time to cook it, like make sure that it's fresh when you serve it for those types of events.
Would you guys start off with just family, like at the beginning of this operation, or you plan on hiring people at the beginning?
Probably family just to start and then like grow from there, cause like my neighbor, like his 4 kids all have like big groups of friends, so we can even like cater to that, be like, hey, like we need a couple friends to come in and work at the counter and stuff like that, and like just expand from that.
So when you think about like a barbecue restaurant in general, people kind of go there to experience like the food, like fresh out the kitchen, and like just the ambiance or something. But your starting point, you say, is carry out. Do you see any potential conflicts maybe between like a traditional barbecue restaurant and your model, and then when you move toward, or when you decide to expand, do you see any potential issue with like getting customers to actually like come into the stores?
Yeah, I think one of like the main issues with that could be like people don't want to go eat ribs in their car because it can be a little bit messy. So I think that's kind of how we're differentiating ourselves to make it more of a grab and go type of food. And like an issue if we were to just start as carry out then expand to the restaurant, they might be used to that like, no, we just want to like go with it type of thing. Cause like people are busy, they don't want to fully sit down for a meal sometimes. So that kind of just would be like a thing to consider about like how you are in consumers' heads.
Did you say you'd be located by airport?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's potentially be a grab and go situation, obviously downtown Chicago.
Yeah.
grab and goes. So I think location is gonna be key for people who literally just wanna grab and go.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of like park districts and like parks and like baseball, football, like softball fields in the area too. So it's also gonna kind of be a thing like, oh, when you know there's gonna be like a grade school football game at like the Hale Park by us, so you can go like put like possibly like experience like food truck even.
Okay, any more questions? All right, well, thank you. Thank you for. Excellent ideas, excellent ideas. I think it's actually helpful when we do these questions for the people who theoretically wanna put their actual business into practice. That we get observations from the outside world, so you guys are getting free feedback about things to think. I mean, a big one was catering, cause you're kinda saying, well, what is our other revenue stream? We don't wanna just have one focus on people just ordering to go.
Yeah.
Catering is huge. Is that production in-house at the restaurant? Is that a whole nother group of staff of people focusing on that? Those are things to maybe consider once you start looking at the risks associated with it. Bars and restaurants, right? Very difficult to succeed, I will say, right? Typically about 80–85% restaurants, bars, over like the life of 5 years, unless they have something really, really unique, it's difficult to sustain because the variability costs, right? Which is like food going bad, not having enough customers, a difference in the times that people come in, like, hey, people don't particularly, Mondays are slow, Tuesdays in the afternoons really slow, so we're not do anything. We send people home. Just a lot of variability, but excellent either way. All right, we'll wrap up with quality and performance, chapter 3. We talked a little bit about quality standards, how to meet specifications, expenses, specs, what the customers expect. Last class we talked about prevention calls, how to prevent defects, ethical failures. I think we may have ended off here, right? Deceptively passing defective products or services, in which case jeopardizing stockholders, customers, employees, and most importantly, reputation, right? So you start putting out bad, let's say for example, we're using food, right? You put out bad food at some time and somebody gives food poisoning or something, right? Yelp is a big one that could either, that can kind of kill a restaurant or something, right? Then we talked about 2QM, which is just a philosophy, stresses performance and quality based on customer satisfaction, employee involvement, continued improvement, and performance. 6 Sigma. Remember I said this is huge. You can get yellow belt, white belt, black belt, be certified. 6 Sigma individuals makes like 125, 150 grand starting, so that's something to look into as you guys get ready to graduate too. Then we talked about customer satisfaction, right? Value conformance to specification. Does it do what it's specified to do? Is it fit for use? Is there support for the product or the service? And what's the psychological impressions of that? And so employee involvement, cultural change, quality at the source. So when you guys graduate and get these jobs, right, if you're not gonna be an entrepreneur, start your own thing, or if you are gonna be an entrepreneur, particularly if people work better in teams than they do individually, right? People work good individually if they're managers and natural leaders. But if they're not natural leaders and managers, they're gonna be part of a team or a group that's gonna have a manager looking out for them. So you think of, I have a brother-in-law, he just got laid off from Microsoft. He had a really, really great job there. Who knows about Microsoft's layoffs? You ever heard about the layoffs from Microsoft? Oh, okay. Well, there are huge layoffs of Microsoft and Google, right? Like 13,000, 18,000 people. Right, so the tech companies, the major ones are suffering right a little bit, right? So they're letting people go. I don't know particularly why they're suffering, because if you look at their last profit loss statements, they all made profit, right? But they let people go. Anyway, he worked on a team that works with problem solving. So you can have individuals who just work particularly looking on how to solve problems that could potentially happen. This is typical with support, right? If you have a phone, you contact Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, and these things, they have support teams that solve your problems, try to fix tech issues or other things like that. Special purpose teams, anything that would be required from some sort of special assessment of the product or service you create. And then self-managed teams, which are ones of the people you really, really trust. They're really exceptional at what they do, really intelligent people, but they're very few, right? There are very few out there self-managed. Typically, you always have some sort of manager at the top. But these are practical steps to having some sort of quality in your product or your service for managing. Kaizen, which is just a philosophy, right? Japanese philosophy of like knowing your customer, empowering your employees, right? How do you empower? The more you empower your employees, the more better the product will be if they work on an assembly line, the more better they will perform if they work at Starbucks and preparing drinks, right? The more better they'll be apt to have perform to create some sort of customer satisfaction. All right, you got all type of problem-solving tools. You have analytical things, software, processes, training, right? New training, things like that. Then plan, do, act, study cycle, which is sort of similar to Kaizen, but it's just steps to take for measurement. All right, 6 Sigma. All right, so here's just a representation of 6 Sigma. 6 Sigma looks to reduce variability and defects by like standard deviations of plus, minus 6. Everyone knows what a standard deviation is? Margin of error, okay. So here's just a representation of, hey, too much variation, and we built this product, we got an assembly line, we're building this product or part, and it's just too much variation in how the, defects are sparse, right? We can't really predict when a defect. The thing is, we want to predict when a defect pops up, so we're able to sort of mitigate that. And here's this product off target. It's just a representation of like, here's our target we're trying to get to. We can predict where things are gonna go bad, but they just all go bad a lot in the same area, right? We're just not close to the center. Here we have a little bit more close to the center, but it's too spread out, it's too varied. And here's where we hit our targets, right? We wanna have targets of customer satisfactions, or products, or parts of, 93% success, right? 95% of our customers that come into our barbecue shop are satisfied. Process works, we can measure this, we can do statistical analysis of some sort. Right, so goal achieving low rates of defective output by developing processes with a mean output for a performance measure of ±6 standard deviations, or sigma, right? Acceptance sampling, basically just, if we're, have suppliers that give us products, we sample them first. We don't just go out and just say, hey, we're gonna make a big order for things, because, we trust you guys, no, send us a sample. Normally they're apt to do that. We're able to sample and test the reliability of, the product you're gonna be sourcing from suppliers. And applying statistical techniques to determine the quantity of material, and how we should either accept or reject based on inspection or test of one or more samples. An acceptable quality level is just a quality level desired by the customer. Here's just another representation. These are, okay, so the final product here they're making is, the big company manufactures furnaces, right? It manufactures furnaces, but obviously they get the parts to manufacture a furnace from other suppliers. So here we get furnace fan motors, and these furnace fan motors get fan blades from this supplier, alright? So fan blades are being shipped out and sent to these people who make fan motors, and fan motors are being shipped out to whoever produces actual furnaces and assemble total. They're just showing sort of the process of how that works. I think I'll end it here and we'll pick this up back. All right, so yeah, quiz on Friday. 30 questions online. You'll have pretty much the whole day to do them. There'll be time though on Blackboard. So just look on Blackboard. Probably send a announcement out just for those of you to remember.
No class?
No class Friday.